In This Week in Jihad, they say they did it all for God, and the infidels are none the wiser. But they better wake up and stop the big cover up, because for this, there's no vaccine from Pfizer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's This Week in Jihad with the great David Wood, and I am Robert Spencer, author of the Quran. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. There is plenty of jihad this week. David, what's the big story this week in jihad?
In jihad, I don't know if it's actually.
Well,
I don't know if it's actually
related. Jihad related, let's say.
Yeah. We call it jihad adjacent.
Jihad adjacent.
I can't get past your poems at the beginning because these aren't like catchphrases or anything. This is like full-fledged poetry.
Yeah, man, this is high class.
I like what you're doing because the subtle implication is that you're a greater poet than Muhammad was, and therefore a greater prophet. But yeah, the
woe is me, poet or possessed.
The big jihad adjacent story this week is Andrew Tate announced his conversion to Islam. I hear everyone talking about him all the time. As far as the details, I have not followed this guy. I've gotten tons of requests over the past few months to talk about Andrew Tate, but I know I'd have to go and watch his stuff and see what the uproar is over because he got banned. I don't know, by all platforms or by at least a few of the major ones for, I think, misogynistic comments. I did see Joe Rogan talking about him. So he was apparently an MMA fighter, a kickboxer, or something like that. And Joe Rogan said there's video of him lashing a woman with a belt or something like that. And apparently the guy is really, really misogynistic and advocates beating women into submission and things like that and putting them in their place and all this. And he's been sort of teasing his appreciation for Islam for a while, saying that Muslims, they really know how to control their women and stuff like that. And then now he has announced his conversion to Islam, and all the main Muslim dawagandists are cheering and alhamdulillah, someone famous converted to Islam. And it's I'm not happy if someone converts to Islam and starts following a false prophet. But my goodness, if I could add anyone on the planet, 7 billion plus people, if I could have added any one of them to the Dawa lineup, it would have been Andrew Tate, right? Like number one. Because keep in mind, when you're talking about the public face of Islam now, I mean, this is the dream team. If you want to destroy this from within, I mean, we're talking Ali Dawa, the same Ali Dawa. Yeah, we're going to kill you, and we're proud of that. Blah blah blah. Right? The same Ali Dawa who, if my daughter's 9 years old and gets her first period, I will tell her she's ready to be married. That same Ali Dawa. We got all this on video. Then you got Muhammad Hijab, golden showers himself. That's him. He's the one. You golden shower. I mean, he was constantly sending us messages about golden showers and men peeing on each other and stuff like this. The same Muhammad Hijab who launched the holes in the narrative interview and completely destroyed the confidence of Muslims in the preservation of the Quran. The same Muhammad Hijab, Allah praise for Muhammad, not to Muhammad. This guy. Then you got Daniel Hakikachu, and Hakikachu is cool because he's just brutally honest. He defends what Islam teaches rather than trying to cover it up. So he'll defend killing apostates and beating women into submission and so on. He'll just offer these elaborate defenses for it. And so he's shifting his followers from denying that these things are part of Islam to defending these things as part of Islam. But that makes our job easier because most of what we've been doing for years is trying to get people to realize what's actually in the sources. So when we see them actually agreeing with us that that's what their sources say, huge game changer. And then of course there's Sheikh Ibn Fibbin, aka Sheikh Ibn Footnote, aka Sheikh Ibn Ketchup, aka Sheikh Uthman, who, I've been stabbed. Look at all the ketchup all over me. He stabbed me in the ketchup bottle. The same The same Sheikh Uthman who, I mean, and then, and then there's been this big uproar. No, maybe he's got some evidence that we're all missing or something like that. But I mean, he said it was. He filed a police report with the San Diego police, and then later he announced that the guy had been arrested and so on. Someone actually like contacted the San Diego Police Department. Hey, what's going on with this? I said, there's been no police report. There's been no arrest. We have no idea what this guy's talking about. And then he was announcing that it was in the San Diego courthouse. And this dude was arrested. Then people contacted the like prosecutor or something from San Diego and said, there's no case on this. We have nothing on this. And so, and Sheikh Uthman, I saw a couple seconds of his response, and it was, "Oh, we've got all the evidence. It's going to come out in this new documentary about my life." And it's like, I've been saying this dude is a narcissist, and now he's already got the documentary of his life. Like, people only heard of this guy like last year, right? And so we've got some competition as far as like the Dawa scene, who's going to be the next big face. And then Andrew Tate comes along. Yeah, we got to beat these women into submission. We got to beat them. Oh, there's a religion that teaches this. Yeah. And now they're all celebrating this. And I'm just looking going, oh my goodness. It's like Christmas in Islam, man. Christmas in Islam.
There is Christmas in Islam. It's in in Surah 5, and there's another one too. It's all in the critical Quran. But anyway, that's for another day. Right now we got stupid infidels to deal with, David. Quite a lot of stupid infidels this week. It's Stupid Infidels Week out here in the hinterlands. And we start with New York City, where they are savvy and sophisticated, and they just issued an official halal guide to their landmarks and tourist attractions. So this is trying to attract Muslims to come tour New York City, which is reasonable because you've got whole countries full of extraordinarily rich Muslims who might want to come and look around at the sites. And so the halal guide tells you to visit the Lit Bar, which turns out to be a bookstore with a very large LGBTQ section. So I think in the first place, this halal guide is a bit tone deaf as to who their audience is. But they do try to be helpful by recommending also some mosques, including the Islamic Society of Bay Ridge in Brooklyn. Now, a little background on that place. Shahawar Mateen Siraj worked at the Islamic Society of Bay Ridge bookstore. He is now serving 30 years in prison for a plot to bomb a Midtown Manhattan subway station. The Islamic Society of Bay Ridge has also been implicated in support for Hamas, and there have been sermons there about the importance of jihad. We know what jihad means, of course. It's an internal spiritual struggle that is entirely benign. The NYPD had an internal document saying that there were supporters of Hamas actively involved in the Islamic Society of Bay Ridge. So in other words, what you have here is terror group linked mosques, because I could go on, there are others as well, being recommended for Muslims to visit by the city of New York.
I mean, it's hard not to actually, find something like that unless you're trying really. I mean, put it this
Indeed.
way: you probably remember years ago when NBC did their Islam 2020 special. No, that was ABC. ABC, they had Diane Sawyer and all these people and stuff like this talking about Islam, and they talked about American Muslims being our first line of defense. American Muslims being our first line of defense against terrorism. And they filmed 3 random Muslims, right? And here is our first line of defense against terrorists. And one of the people they filmed was Sadiq Abdul Malik, who, I mean, he was speaking for Revolution Muslim, right? Like a bunch of those guys are locked up. That's the same group that threatened the South Park creators. And like several of them went to prison. That's Sadiq Abdul Malik is rolling with those dudes. It's like you couldn't point to 3 random Muslims without getting a guy from Revolution Muslim.
Yeah, they really are in a tough spot when they try to do these moderate Muslim presentations. You remind me of another one from PBS, I believe it was, and PBS did a big show about Muslims in America after 9/11, and they profiled several people and followed them around. And one of them was a congressional aide, and I forget which congressman he was an aide for. Doesn't matter. I forget his name too. But the real point of the story is that he went to prayers on Capitol Hill because he was a congressional aide, and they have Islamic prayers on Capitol Hill for the various Muslims who work in that area. And so he's going into this Capitol office room, and it's packed. And the camera pans over, and you see Nihal Awad is there, and Ibrahim Hooper from the Council on American Islamic Relations, as well as Randall Todd Royer, also with CARE at that time, who later served, I believe it was 12 or 13 years in prison for planning jihad activity, working with paintball to train to fight the real jihad. And several other luminaries of the American Muslim scene. And then the camera pans back to show the preacher, the imam leading the prayers, and it's Anwar al-Awlaki. Oh yeah, it's true. For years this was on YouTube, and they had no idea. I don't know if it's still there.
Like, guys, for those of you who are watching, don't know who we're talking about. Like, I mean, unless it was Osama bin Laden himself, you could not get worse than Anwar al-Awlaki. That's who they. Oh man, wow.
Yep. Anyway, so that's a dumb infidel story from history, but we got so many this week. In Greece this week, a 30-year-old migrant from Iraq raped an 11-year-old girl. I wonder where he got the idea of sexualizing young girls. Where do you think he could have gotten such an idea? Where, David? It's a mystery.
Muhammad and the Quran.
Really?
Muhammad and the Quran. Yeah, you can have sex with young girls. You can have sex with. You can take infidel girls as your captives and so on. So.
My goodness. I never heard of such a thing. Well, anyway, let's see. Dimitrios Vaina, the deputy mayor of Katerini in Greece, where this happened, he said, "This is a heinous act and we condemn it." Okay, so far so good. I'm glad you're not for it. "It is a fact that Greece must accept migrants who are persecuted by their countries for many reasons." I'm not sure why that is a fact. But
yeah, okay. I mean, I think it's good when someone says, "Hey, this person's being persecuted or killed or something like that, or this group is being killed and so on in this other country, and we're going to try to help some of these people or something like that." I think that's good, but I mean, as far as like required or something like that, that's a weird idea. And there seem to be a lot of people who get overlooked in that selection process, and they keep just getting like jihadis and people who want to rape girls and so on.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Yeah. And then he goes on to say, and this is the real punchline here, David, "Apart from that, we as a municipality cannot psychoanalyze every refugee about who he is, what he stands for, and what perversions he may have." And I think, well, you could have had a real easy way to find out if you would look at Islam, but you don't dare. And you wouldn't dream of connecting this guy's behavior to what Islam teaches about marriage to a young girl, because it would be Islamophobic.
And I mean, it seems like you just have to be insanely stupid not to at least recognize some patterns. Like if you're in the UK and almost all of these grooming gangs are made up of Pakistani Muslims, maybe we should start taking a closer look at whatever is convincing Pakistani Muslims that this is totally fine. Maybe we need to look into that. But nope, no time for that sort of psychoanalysis. No time to even arrest these guys unless it becomes too much of an embarrassment. No time to protect the girls. No time for anything except to bring in the rapists.
That's it.
It's the only time. It's the only thing we got time for, Robert. Bringing in the rapists. Other than that, we've got no time. There's no time. There's no time.
We've got to hurry. These people are in danger.
That rapist is at risk of being arrested in his home country if we don't take him in to rape girls over here.
You know,
Do you want that to happen? Do you want that guy to be persecuted? No. Do you want the rapist to be persecuted in his own country? Come on, Robert. Show some compassion. It's Greece. The land of the Spartans.
That was a long time ago.
The land of the Spartans as far as the military goes. The land, I mean, my goodness, Alexander the Great, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, some of the most brilliant minds ever. And now it's, we're bringing the rapists. We need more rapists here. My goodness, what happened to people?
Yeah, also, it's worth noting that modern Greece gained its independence from the Ottoman Empire in 1821 because they were tired of living under Islamic rule. They wanted to be free of being dhimmis and being subjugated as inferiors under the hegemony of the people who they are bringing in large numbers today, and think they have an obligation to do so.
And Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there a lot of people in the Muslim world, especially the area of Turkey and stuff, who have an especially low view of the Greeks and want to take them over and things like that? In other words, beyond mere non-Muslims, they have a desire to put these people back in their place.
Yes, precisely because they were the first to cast off the imperial yoke and gain independence. And so this is not acceptable. They do have to be taught a lesson. All right, got plenty more Stupid Infidels. It's Stupid Infidels Week here at Jihad Central. And so, hey, we can go to our friend Hatun in the UK, who won a big judgment this week.
That was cool.
Yes, indeed, against the Stupid Infidels. £10,000. 10,000 pounds of what? 10,000 pounds is $11,300 awarded to Hatun Tash, the famed and extraordinarily heroic and courageous speaker at Speaker's Corner, Christian evangelist. She was, of course, assaulted, abused, and harassed on multiple occasions by Muslims at Speaker's Corner, with the cops just standing by. Finally, they took action. They threw her out. And she has now won a judgment of that $11,000 in compensation for wrongful arrest. 2 wrongful arrests. We can hope that this will herald more police protection for her as she returns to Speaker's Corner. But I don't know, given that it's still the London police. I'm not confident.
Yeah, and it's cool because it's a Christian legal center who took up her case, and she just giving them the money because she doesn't want it. But it's like, I know Hatun has not wanted in the past to do much about the way she's treated, but it's you have to, right? You have to, because as you're pointing out, that's the only thing that will make the police think twice about going after Christians in the future. So you have to go after these guys legally. And as someone who's been on the receiving end of that, right, I want to say it is completely different. If a jihadi comes up and takes a swing at me, that's one thing. If police then come and arrest me for it, that is a really weird situation. That we've been on the receiving end of police coming up and just arresting us. There's a conversation going on. Police just come up and arrest the Christians because they don't want to arrest the Muslims because they're worried about a backlash and so on. I've been on the receiving end of that one. And that is really creepy, because normally you think, okay, if this guy's attacking me or this guy takes a swing, no problem. We'll call the cops to come in and fix the situation. If the cops are just going to come and arrest you and throw you in jail, that, like, who do you call? Well, of course we know. She did the same thing we did. Lawyers. You send in lawyers to deal with the problem. So anyway, that's really awesome, and I think that'll help that'll help a lot of Christians at Speaker's Corner from being unfairly arrested. With that said, I predict in celebration we might have Hatun meet Muhammad in the Boom Boom Room this Friday.
Well, that's exciting. Everybody be
Hatun
sure to
meeting
tune
Muhammad.
in.
She might even throw a shoe at him, huh?
That's pretty huge. That's huge news. All right, we go
She
to
might show
France. Yes.
she might show him she might show him some of her Muhammad cartoons.
Oh man, he's gonna love those.
What's
He's
with
got
all the
such a
spoilers, David? My goodness. All
he's
right, go
he's
ahead.
gonna he's gonna love those. Remember how nice he was to the Jewish woman who threw garbage at him. Remember in that
Yep, yep,
fake story that they always love to tell.
yep.
Anyway,
And like to squish.
Bordeaux in France, a young man began to shout in the crowded shopping street in the center of Bordeaux on last Saturday at 6:30 in the evening. Join the Islamic State. We must cut the throats of the disbelievers.
Was that Andrew Tate?
Might have been. Might have been. Anyway, he was arrested, but what do you think they're going to give him, David? Uh, you're such a good prognosticator. Do you think that they're going to give him a long prison sentence?
They're gonna give him this.
Yes, in the form of a psychiatric examination, because obviously anybody who thinks we have to cut the throat of infidels must be crazy, and there's no other possible explanation.
I'm surprised they don't give these guys medals the route they're going.
Yeah, it's true. It's on the way. Oh, speaking of giving these guys medals, David, I don't know how you do it. It's a perfect segue here. The Palestinian journalist Shatha Hamad. Shatha Hamad, an observant Muslim, hijab-wearing journalist, and she was given the Kurt Schork Award. The Kurt Schork Award is an award that recognizes the courageous work of freelance journalists, local reporters, and news fixers. And the Thomson Reuters Foundation honored Miss Hamad with this award, apparently. But then, as it turned out, she was on Facebook, wouldn't you know it, praising Hitler. Saying, me and Hitler are friends.
I've seen that one over and over again. They'll prop up some new hero, and then someone eventually goes through the person's social media posts, and yeah, it's usually praising some terrorist group or Hitler with disturbing regularity.
Yeah.
What'd you say that was? The Kurt Schork Award?
Kurt Schork, yes.
I think all these jihadis should get the Shirk Award. The Shirk Award for kissing the black stone and talking to Muhammad during their prayers.
Uh-oh. Well, if Allah prays to Muhammad, then they can too.
For Muhammad. He prays for Muhammad.
I don't know. It's not what it really says in the actual Quran.
It says like praise upon Muhammad. And so the question is, what does it mean to pray upon someone?
Yeah, that's AY, by the way, not EY. He prays upon, with EY, the rest of us.
Yeah, like here's Muhammad and Allah is praying upon him.
Yeah.
Weird stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, he prays for him. I actually have a section on that in the Critical Quran on chapter 33, verse 36. So you can consult that for more information, ladies and gentlemen. But, you know, the Kurt Schork Award being given, I mean, I never heard of the Kurt Schork Award before, but you're right. Shatha Hamad is just the kind of person that these agencies love to lionize, and it backfires on them because they do not realize the depth of Islamic anti-Semitism. And here again, they're forbidden to know it because it would be Islamophobic to even investigate the possibility. So nobody ever even thought that this hijab-wearing Palestinian journalist could possibly be anti-Semitic. It would have been inconceivable.
Yeah, it's a religion of peace and tolerance. And
Yeah.
and as you know, it's such a tiny minority of extremists that if you did, by some miracle, find someone who's anti-Semitic in Islam, he'd be so far out of the mainstream that you never find the guy.
Yeah, because the vast majority of Muslims who love and respect the Jews as people of the book would rebuke these people and make sure that they were understood to be not mainstream.
Yeah, because Muhammad loved the Jews so much.
Yes, he did. Yes, you could tell that at Kaibar.
Oh yeah.
All right, in France, the cement company Lafarge has pleaded guilty last Tuesday to paying millions of dollars to ISIS because they were making cement in Syria and they wanted to keep their cement plant in Syria open, but ISIS overran the area. So Lafarge paid off ISIS to divert the jihad away from their cement plant.
I mean,
They cemented a relationship with ISIS, you could say.
that. I mean, that's exactly what you'd want as a jihadi, right?
Yeah, because that's the whole idea. You get the infidels to submit and pay the jizya. That's the whole goal of the jihad. So if the infidel says, hey, I'll pay you, okay, well, we can skip the jihad part. Spain. In Spain, we have Mohammed Saeed Badawi, and he is a jihad preacher. He's a 40-year-old man from Morocco, and he is preaching with great influence, according to Le Figaro, the French paper, in the region of Tarragona in Catalonia, since he arrived in the area. And he's preaching Salafism, which of course is a virulent form of interpreting the Quran, interpreting Islam, with no apologies for preaching violent jihad against infidels and so on. Now, what's interesting is that he is also what he calls an anti-racism activist, and that he has been publicly supported by the main Catalan independence parties and the Catalan branch of a Spanish party called Podemos, which is a radical leftist political party that actually was in the news a couple of years ago because they were getting funding from the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so here we have a very good example of the leftist Islamic alliance, in that this anti-racism activist is preaching jihad, getting supported the whole time by leftist infidels in Spain, who themselves are being supported by the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's a tangled web, David, but
Isn't that weird though? That like, I mean, I'm inherently like pretty non-political on most issues. I've never voted in my life. My dad never voted. We don't care a whole. I'm not saying be like that. I'm just saying, we're always like, we got better things to do than worry about politics and so on. But isn't it weird that like anywhere you go in the world, it's like the left that aligns with Islam?
mm-hmm. It is weird. And I have explained it over the years. Millions of people have asked me why. And I've explained it over the years as being connected to the authoritarian utopianism of both groups. That is, both groups want to establish an earthly paradise. Sharia is an earthly paradise, the rule of Islam of Islamic law, because it's Allah's perfect law. And if you get out of line, you get back in line by being terrorized. They cut off your hand, they cut off your head, they stone you to death, what have you. And so it's the same thing with the radical left. When they get in power, they want to establish the workers' paradise. And if you don't like it, you go to the gulag. It's the same thing. A utopia established by a reign of terror. However, there are no doubt contradictions between the two groups, notably, of course, in morality. And these cracks are showing. In Dearborn, I believe we talked about it a bit last week, the altercation in Dearborn when Muslims were protesting at a school board meeting about the LGBTQ agenda being forced upon their children in the schools, and they don't want it. And Muslims and Christians both were fighting against this and denouncing the school board, quite rightly. They were definitely in the right. But what's remarkable is that in the aftermath of this, all these leftists have been lecturing the Muslims and saying, we fought the right wingers to bring you here, and now you have turned on us. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And you owe us, in other words, is the vibe. But really, this kind of break, I think, was inevitable because these kinds of things were never going to be compatible. These two perspectives.
Well, we'll have your backs when people point out Muhammad's teachings about terrorism and all this stuff, as long as you have our backs when we teach your kids all this LGBTQ stuff. And Muslims, they don't realize Muslims didn't sign on for that, right? Hey,
Yeah.
it's great that we have some common foes here, and we're happy to, but you don't go near our kids. That's what they're saying basically. And
No doubt about
it,
that.
it is really weird that that community thought, hey, since we've been defending them from criticism when it comes to terrorism, therefore they're going to be on board with us going after their kids to indoctrinate their kids.
Yeah.
my goodness. Wow.
Here again, their naivete about what Islam is all about interfered with their ability to make a sound, sober judgment. They're working from fantasy, pretend Islam, not the real thing. Okay, so lots more dumb infidels. Here's one, Mandela Barnes. He's running for Senate in Wisconsin. And it has come out, however, that a few years back, the Ayatollah Khamenei of Iran tweeted in favor of Black Lives Matter. And Mandela Barnes was thrilled, and he said the first tweet, it was January 1st, 2015, the first tweet of 2015 from the Ayatollah Khamenei is Black Lives Matter. Let that sink in. May this be a most wonderful year for you and yours. So now he's in a bit of hot water for appearing to have thought of the Ayatollah Khamenei as some sort of a respectable figure whose endorsement was to be coveted.
Yeah, that's like, hey, Kim Jong Un
Yep.
just defended me. Like, what?
Yeah. It's exactly. And so this is once again the leftist Islamic alliance. It's breaking down. Nobody really cared about that, probably, anyway, when Mandela Barnes tweeted it in 2015. But now, with the Iranians rising up and the protests continuing to go on, and they've made it very clear they don't want the Islamic Republic, and that the Islamic Republic is repressive and inhuman. It's landed him in some hot water. Back to France. In France, we have yet another threat from yet another parent to yet another teacher. And what happened was the teacher started to speak about the freedom of speech, the importance of the freedom of speech, and so on, even when it comes to cartoons of Muhammad. Also, the teacher was teaching in history about the Third Reich, about Hitler, but apparently he took a dim view of Hitler. So this parent came to the school, and the teacher says, she verbally attacked me directly, telling me that I was a racist, Islamophobic teacher. Okay, so she's the victim. He's an Islamophobe. And she says, she reminded me not to forget, and above all to understand, what happened to Samuel Paty, who is the teacher who was beheaded for showing cartoons of Muhammad to his class. And so the parent now is threatening to kill this teacher. And the teacher went to the administrators, and the principal said, we don't want to make waves. We're not going to do anything about this. We want this to quiet down, calm down. And of course it will, because the more they submit, the less trouble they'll have.
Yeah, and then when you have a massacre like the Charlie Hebdo massacre and so on, France will suddenly become pro free speech for like 2 days, and then of course it goes away.
Also in France, the stupid infidels are running wild this week. We have the news that people are set to be deported, and a lot of these people who are set to be deported are jihadis, because those are the people that are causing trouble when they come to France. But it has come to light this week that only 0.2% of Algerians, 2.4% of Moroccans, and 4% of Tunisians who are set to be deported are ever actually deported. So, in other words, over 96% of the Muslims, including numerous jihadis from North Africa who are scheduled to be deported from France, never leave.
There's no time, Robert. There's only time to bring them in.
That's right.
No time to psychoanalyze them or anything else, or let alone deport them. Come on.
In Germany, meanwhile, we have the Germans once again saying, "Wir schaffen das, ja? We can do this." And what they are going to do, David, they are going to take 1,000 Afghans every month.
Nice.
1,000 Afghans a month.
See, they got time for that.
That's right. Now you see, a lot of the Afghans they bring in, it'll be great. They'll bring wonderful food. They'll have a wonderful time there. Everything will be great. A few of the Afghans, however, will be jihadis.
Mm-hmm.
And some French people will die as a result of their activity. No, German, excuse me. Maybe French too, because it's easy to get from one to the other. But it's the Germans going to take in 1,000 Afghans a month. And I don't mean blankets.
It's like they're saying, hey, I mean, and they have to know this, right? They have to know that they're getting some jihadis with the bunch. And it's like they're saying that the people who are killed because of the jihadis we're bringing in are a small price to pay for us being so tolerant.
David, I had to add this to the screen here for a minute because I remember from earlier shows this lady or whoever it is German. And I believe that's saying, "I'm moving back to Poland." You always got to be careful when Germans start saying that. But anyway, here comes the pornographers again. You people, really.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Gee, I wonder who's spamming that.
Oh, they do that? Is that somebody is doing that on purpose to cause trouble? I'm naive. I don't know.
It could be bots, but I've had a lot of trouble in the past. With keyboard jihadis come along and just posting links to porn.
Well, that certainly does explain it. Yeah. Okay. There are a few more dumb infidels, but we should move on to a few other things here. The Iranian protests are ongoing. There's quite a lot of news out of Iran. One Christian activist, a very courageous lady named Mary Mohammadi, Fatima Mohammadi, but now she goes by Mary. She's a convert to Christianity, and she was arrested a few years back, and she says that frequently the police in Iran force women that they arrest to strip, and they often rape them. And she actually even asked them, she said, "If my hair is a problem," a hijab violation, "if my hair is a problem, is it not a worse problem to force me to take off all my clothes? Is this Islamic?" Well, is it?
For a Christian, yeah.
Well, it's Islamic because what the police are doing is trying to make sure the woman goes to hell.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying
and multiple things. So wear the hijab so that you're not molested and things like that. But yeah, I mean, notice she's speaking common sense wise, right? Like, hey,
Yes.
If you think it's a problem for a girl not to have a covering on her head, what do you think of, hey, let's get her in a room and make her strip in front of us?
Yep. But their game, of course, is to humiliate, to demean, to frighten, to strike terror in the heart. And also with the rape, especially if the woman's been sentenced to death, they want to make sure she goes to hell because rape is the woman's fault in the Islamic perspective. so she'll go to hell for this great sin. I know it sounds crazy, but the idea is the woman didn't prevent the temptation, which is what the hijab is for. Speaking of the hijab, we have a story out of Boston, Massachusetts. In Boston, there is a city councilor named Tanya Fernandez Anderson. Despite her name, she is a Sunni Muslim and wears a hijab. And she had this great idea, David. Her great idea is to honor Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old girl whose death touched off this uprising in Iran, by declaring her birthday, September 23rd, to be Hijab Day in Boston. Great idea, am I right?
Yes, very, very respectful towards the woman who was killed for not having her hijab on correctly well,
Indeed.
I mean, but I guess it fits the pattern. I mean, after every terrorist attack for years, it was let's honor Islam more and more and more. And every 9/11, hey, let's get on a ton of Islamic preachers and evangelists to tell everyone about how wonderful Islam is. And then there are conversions afterwards, and you see, look at all the conversions after 9/11. Yeah, because after every terrorist attack, you guys parade Muslim preachers across your show to show how tolerant you are. And then so I don't know. I guess that's just the pattern now.
Yep. So Tanya Fernandez Anderson is saying that it's because of Islamophobia, you see. There's so much Islamophobia in the U.S., supposedly, against women who wear hijab, which I think is a lot of hooey. I've never even found a single authentic story of a woman being persecuted for wearing a hijab. I've seen a lot of fake stories that were exposed ultimately, but never seen a real one. But anyway, she says women in America who wear hijab have such a hard time. Like, see, she was just elected to Boston City Council. It's terrible how she's persecuted. And therefore, she's just like Mahsa Amini in reverse.
Yeah, I mean, look at Ilhan Omar, man.
Yeah,
rough.
Persecuted.
Came here from a refugee camp, and now she's in Congress.
Yeah,
persecution is
for
horrible here.
Islamophobia and racism, she would be a senator. Okay, in the Islamic Republic of Iran, we have a lot of uprisings in schools, girls very courageously posting photos of themselves without hijab, and the Islamic Republic actually went into some of these schools, fired tear gas, and an Islamic cleric in Iran, the very famed hardline cleric Ahmad Khatami, he said that we need to get tougher. We're not being tough enough. And it reminds me, these guys, they really only have one tool in their box, and that is terror. Because the Quran says, strike terror in the enemies of Allah. And so what else can they do? They don't really know how to do anything else. And so if the people can hold out and keep coming in the face of their repression, then they'll win. Because they can't kill everybody in Iran.
This is an extremely rough period for leaders in Muslim countries, because for 14 centuries, as you pointed out, for 14 centuries they've had one way of doing things, and now because of like social media and because people can film it, can record it quickly and upload it to social media, then they're being exposed and being condemned and mocked around the world, and they don't like that. But like, what else can you do? Like it's for like the Iranian regime. It's either we win by crushing this uprising. I mean, we have to crush it, in which case we look really, really bad, or we just lose and they crush us, and it's not going to be pretty for us, because as soon as the people rise up and take over, it's not going to be pretty for these leaders that have been killing them in the streets and raping their women. So
that's it, David, because 533 in the Quran, kill or crucify those who are sowing corruption in the land. It doesn't give you a plan B. You just keep killing them and crucifying them. You just keep cutting off their hands and feet on opposite sides. You keep striking terror like the Quran says in 860. But that's all you got.
Yeah, sorry, I'm laughing because I was just thinking about a meme, like a picture of the Iranian Ayatollah or some terrorist or something like that, and terror because there is no plan B. And,
That's it. You should be his propaganda minister. Anyway, maybe that's not the best job. Okay, we have kinetic real jihad here. We have actually a jihad attack in Iran just earlier today. Very strange, really. I find this puzzling. I'm not really sure. But the Iranian news agencies reported it, and there is video. I'm not saying I don't think it happened, but it's just odd. ISIS has claimed responsibility for an attack on a mosque in Shiraz, and 15 people were killed, up to 40 were wounded. We can see the video. There is video of this guy walking in with a rifle, shooting away. And the ISIS group has said it's theirs. They said this evening the soldiers of the Caliphate, by the grace of Allah Almighty, carried out an operation against a polytheist temple for the Rafidis. That's the Sunni pejorative word for Shiite, in the city of Shiraz. This operation resulted in 40 dead and wounded. Praise be to Allah. And I think, wait a minute, ISIS has not struck in Iran. Maybe there were a couple things here and there, but they were not a big presence in Iran. And I wonder, does this mean that the security forces in Iran are so distracted with the uprising that they were not able to keep ISIS out? Does it mean that ISIS thinks the regime is going to fall and wants to help give it a push and take advantage of the chaos after? I don't know. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the MO for terrorist groups, especially like ISIS, waiting to sort of sense weakness to pounce. If it's a situation where they know they'll be crushed instantly and they just don't have the power, because I mean, keep in mind that's Muhammad's pattern, right? Like if he can't win a physical confrontation, hey, God will judge us, but let's not fight each other. And then when he's in power, then crush them. But with ISIS and the fall of Saddam, or hey, Assad's busy with this Arab Spring. Now's our chance to jump on it. And it looks like, hey, all the soldiers and police are over there bashing the heads of women in. Now's our chance to run in and launch a terrorist attack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does seem to be the case. Meanwhile, in India, we have some terrible scenes coming out of the Hindu festival of Diwali, which was just a few days ago. I think it's actually still going on. It's multiple days. In any case, a gentleman named Muhammad Abdullah. That's another question I should actually ask you for your prognostications. What's the guy's name? Is it Bill? Is it Fred? Anyway, he was preparing rasgullas, which is an Indian sweet, to sell to Hindus during Diwali. But he was actually poisoning them. And quite a large quantity he was making. It says that the police in Meerut in India destroyed hundreds of thousands of these poisonous sweets. We have seen food poisoning kind of jihad activity in the past, also suspicious activity around water treatment plants. And Al-Qaeda a few years back spoke about how it would be a great thing to poison the water supply in a major Western metropolitan area. Luckily, that has not come to pass as of yet.
Well, it turns out it's actually pretty difficult to poison a mass water supply because, unless you can dump a lot in there, it becomes so diluted that it doesn't do it. So it's more like figuring out exactly how to go about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, France. Muslim migrant got a knife in the town of Saint Etienne. What was he screaming, David? Do you still have your roulette wheel?
Oh, sure.
Let's see what he was screaming.
I'm going to see if this thing is right 2 weeks in a row. Ready?
Yeah, that would be tough. It says Allahu
right?
Akbar. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's right?
Yeah.
Whoa. What are the odds?
Wow. That is
I feel
impressive.
like I just need to go on this run I'm having. I feel like I just need to go on Jeopardy because
Absolutely.
I will fund all our work for the rest of our lives.
Yep. Anyway, he walking around waving the knife, screaming Allahu Akbar. The police come to arrest him. He glorified terrorism and threatened to kill them. And he turns out to be one of those guys I mentioned before. He is in the country illegally and has been ordered to leave, but he didn't leave.
Robert,
Yes, sir.
there's no time. Don't you? Which part of no time do you know? There's only time. I mean, there's a limited amount of time, limited amount of resources, limited amount of people, and so you've got no time apart from bringing them in.
You got no time. You're right.
No time.
He was busy too. He had to buy the knife. Okay. Mozambique. We have the Islamic State there. The Islamic State actually owns most of the province of Cabo Delgado in northern Mozambique. And this is a problem because this is the this is the area where there are quite a lot of oil wells. And recently they attacked a ruby mine. And people don't really realize that this is high stakes material, because if ISIS gets control of these high value operations, then ISIS is financed for another decade or more and will only continue to grow in influence. We could see another caliphate established in Africa not too long from now.
Isn't it crazy? Like you wonder what what evidence there has to be to convince Western journalists and politicians to abandon this tiny minority of extremist myth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had ISIS, and then you had people from France and Spain and Germany and Great Britain and the US, people from all over the planet rush in to join this. And then even after they lose control, it still spreads all over the place. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. They're still in. I mean, they're everywhere from Afghanistan and India all the way over to Africa, and it's like, hey, these guys keep getting killed, keep getting rounded up, keep getting arrested, and there's a never-ending supply of them. At what point do you say, okay, it's not a tiny minority of extremists we're dealing with here? But no, our leaders are impervious to evidence and reality.
I got more of that. I got a tiny minority of extremist story for you. Roshan M. Saleh. Roshan M. Saleh is the editor of Five Pillars UK. Five Pillars UK is a very useful, as a matter of fact, Islamic newspaper in Britain. And I have gotten stories out of it for Jihad Watch, paradoxically, because of course it's an Islamic source, but sometimes they have very interesting information, very interesting expositions of various Islamic teachings, and so on. And I am 100% certain, that if you were to ask any British official, what do you think of Roshan Saleh and Five Pillars UK? They would say, oh, that's just the kind of Muslims that we want in Britain. They are moderate and peaceful and have integrated into British society. So what happened was, Britain is undergoing a period of turmoil, political turmoil, because they keep choosing politicians who are liars and break their promises. And so they had a new prime minister. They had one prime minister, the guy who couldn't comb his hair, and he lied and broke his promises, and they threw him out. And they got another one who said she was going to do this and that and the other. And very quickly, within days, it became clear that she too was lying and betraying all her promises. And they pitched her out, shortest tenured prime minister in the history of Britain. Now they got another one, a third one. But Roshan Saleh, when the second prime minister resigned, he tweeted, "Secular democracy has failed in the UK. Time for an Islamic state?" Well, not yet, but soon.
Now, I mean, couple things there. One, it shows there are a lot of people who get along with people in the West, and yet their ultimate goal is for an Islamic state, right? It may be 5 years from now, maybe 100 years from now, but they're thinking to the future when they will eventually be able to take over. But the second thing is like how insane that is, right? Like, where has Islam worked that's better than the UK? Like, granted, the UK is one big giant disaster. That's why a couple of farmers here in the US with pitchforks kicked them out a couple centuries ago. But like, like, who in the UK would say, "Hey, look at all these people coming over here for to get out of Islamic countries because they can't stand them, because Islam does a really, really bad job establishing any place where anyone except Andrew Tate wants to live. And they come over here to go to a better place, and then it's, hey, you've got some problems here with your prime ministers. Why don't you adopt the policies of Iran or Pakistan or Afghanistan? Why don't you get the Taliban over here? Wouldn't that be better?" It's like insane, right? It's like the most idiotic thing ever. And
We'll
this
fix
is someone for a huge Islamic paper.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not a tiny extremist. He's actually normal sized, and he is not extreme. He's mainstream. If anybody is mainstream Islam in Britain, it's Roshan Saleh and Five Pillars. Anyway, in India, we have another story of the hatred and contempt that a believer is supposed to show for the infidels and for their sacred objects. And so we have a Muslim entering a Hindu temple and urinating on a Hindu idol. Very great expression of contempt there, David.
Isn't it weird, though? Because I'll make Muhammad's boom boom room, and there's, what? No Muslim has ever insulted the religious symbols of anyone else's religion. Like, where have you been for 14 centuries, and why have you never read even what your prophet did to the idols around the Kaaba? Where are you getting this from? Then no, we would never do that in our religion.
Yep. Meanwhile, also in Africa, we not only have the Islamic State active in Mozambique and controlling province of Cabo Delgado, but we have in Mali. I really think Mali should get together with Chad, don't you? But anyway, that's another story. In Mali, we have the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara. And they have, this past week, advanced further into the eastern part of the country, seizing territory, killing hundreds of civilians, and forcing thousands to flee. Now that is a major operation. That is very clearly not a tiny minority. It's clearly not an insignificant movement. And so we could end up with caliphates in West Africa, in Southern Africa, and also in East Africa and Somalia.
Seems like there's about to be caliphates everywhere.
Indeed. In Somalia, jihadis stormed a hotel. A jihad bomber rammed the entrance gate, and then jihadis ran in, started shooting. The number of casualties is not yet known. It was the Tabakal Hotel in Kismayo, and it was a popular place for government officials to eat, which is probably why they hid it. And so it seems as if these jihad groups are acting with pretty much complete impunity in Africa, and we should think about what the possibilities. I mean, what the likelihood of what that's going to be like in a few years or in a few decades. So same thing in Europe. We could end up with Islamic caliphates in Africa, Islamic caliphates in Europe. There's really nothing, I don't see what's stopping those things from developing at this point.
Not looking good for the future there.
But anyway, I'm sorry to end on a note that is a bit of a downward note, but unfortunately that is the reality of jihad, ladies and gentlemen. There's going to be more jihad next week, and so, God willing, we will be back to tell you about it. In the meantime, be sure to catch Muhammad's Boom Boom Room and all the very, very striking and important guests that you're going to have coming up there. And that's it for Jihad for this week. Unfortunately, they do not stop. So, till next week, good evening and God bless.